For over 100 years, it's been the world's greatest shortcut, just this absolute triumph of engineering that completely changed how we do global trade. But then, in 2023, this modern marvel hit a very, very old snag, one that threatened to grind the entire global economy to a halt. So we're going to get into the story of that crisis, and believe it or not, it's a pretty surprising comeback.
So, what is the Panama Canal, really? Well, at its core, it's a pretty simple idea. It's this 51-mile shortcut, basically a water bridge that connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. This means ships get to skip that incredibly long, dangerous trip all the way around the tip of South America. A total game changer.
But, okay, while the idea is simple, its impact, anything but. We're talking about a single waterway that links almost 2,000 ports across 170 countries. It is, without a doubt, one of the most critical spots in the entire global supply chain. Everything flows through here. Now, think about this. To lift these massive, massive ships up and over a whole continent, you need an unbelievable amount of water. And this huge, complex, brilliant system, it has one single, shockingly simple weak spot.
What is it? It's all about the rain. Every single trip a ship makes through that canal is powered by fresh water that comes from the local watershed. So, what happens when the rain just stops? Well, that's exactly what happened in 2023. A historic drought hit, and suddenly, the world's greatest shortcut was running on empty.
All right, so to really get how big of a deal this crisis was, we've got to understand what was on the line here. Because, the Panama Canal isn't just some nice-to-have shortcut. For a huge chunk of the world, it's an absolute economic lifeline.
Okay, so you look at this and think, 6% of global maritime commerce, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, right? But here's the thing, it's not about the percentage, it's about the concentration. You're forcing a massive amount of super important trade through this one tiny little passage. And that's what makes the canal what we call a geopolitical choke point.
And when you dig into the numbers, they're just staggering. Seriously, 14,000 ships a year. It connects nearly 2,000 ports all over the globe. But look at this, especially for the United States, the dependency is just off the charts. 40% of all U.S. container traffic goes through here, and a whopping 70% of its total cargo volume. We're talking about a matter of national economic security at this point.
So, how does this thing even work? The easiest way to picture it is like a giant water elevator. It literally lifts ships up, carries them over the mountains of the Continental Divide, and then gently sets them back down on the other side.
For 100 years, you had the original Panamax locks, and they worked great. But then, in 2016, everything changed with this massive expansion. They brought in the new Neopanamax locks to handle today's megaships. And this table just perfectly shows the huge leap in what they can do. Yeah, the new locks are way bigger, but check out the real kicker: max vessel capacity. It went from about 5,000 containers to 14,000. It almost tripled. Just incredible.
But here's where it gets really, really clever. You'd think bigger locks, bigger ships must use way more water, right? Nope, it's the opposite. Each of these new locks has these 3 massive basins right next to it. So instead of just flushing all that precious freshwater out to sea, they drain it into these basins. And then they reuse it for the next ship, saving 60% of the water every single time. It's so efficient that a giant Neopanamax ship now uses 7% less water than a much smaller ship did in the old locks. That's just brilliant engineering.
So the canals had this amazing, super efficient water-saving technology. But what good is saving water when there's no water to save in the first place? That was the problem in 2023, when a truly historic drought pushed the whole system right to the edge.
I mean, this quote really says it all. A powerful El Niño just completely starved the region of rain. We're talking rainfall 43% below average. And so the water levels in Gatun Lake, that's the giant reservoir, that's basically the beating heart of the whole system, they just started to plummet.
So with the water levels just tanking, the Canal Authority had to make a tough call. They had no choice but to slash operations. Daily ship transits went from a normal of about 38 all the way down to just 24, and that created a traffic jam like you wouldn't believe. I mean, a massive, unprecedented bottleneck, with hundreds of ships just stuck, waiting on both sides of the canal.
And things got worse fast. By late 2023, we're down to 24 slots. Then, by February 2024, officials were warning it could drop to a catastrophic 18 ships a day. I mean, that would have been a total disaster. But then, just in the nick of time, the rainy season showed up. The lake started to refill, and by August, they were able to get the number back up to 35. The immediate crisis, at least, was over.
Okay, and this is where the story gets really wild. You've got this massive crisis that's crippling global shipping. So you'd assume it was a total financial disaster for the canal itself, right? I mean, that only makes sense.
Yeah, you would think. Cutting your traffic by more than a third, that should absolutely tank your revenue. Fewer ships, less money. That's how it's supposed to work. But the weird economics of a global choke point, they don't play by the normal rules.
Get this. In the fiscal year right after the drought, the Panama Canal didn't just scrape by. It posted a record-breaking net profit of over $4.1 billion. Let me say that again. That's almost $700 million more than they made the year before the crisis. How on earth did that happen?
So how in the world is that possible? Well, it's the most basic economics lesson there is: supply and demand. With so few transit slots available, it created this frantic high-stakes auction. Shipping companies were absolutely desperate to avoid waiting for weeks or months, so they started paying millions, literally millions of dollars in auction fees just to jump the line. And that was on top of the normal tolls. So basically, the canal was able to front-load its revenue. They made way more money from way fewer ships. It's kind of mind-boggling.
So yeah, the Canal Authority managed to turn a climate disaster into a financial home run. But they're smart. They know they can't count on that auction fee bonanza forever. So now the focus is shifting to a massive new engineering project all about securing the canal's future.
And the problem they're facing is pretty straightforward. The current water supply, the watershed they have now, it just isn't big enough anymore to reliably handle both the canal and Panama's growing population. So what's the solution? It's called the Rio Indio Reservoir Project. We're talking about a $1.6 billion plan to build a whole new reservoir and then a tunnel to pipe that water directly into the canal system. It is a massive investment, but the goal is to lock down a stable water supply for the next half-century.
And the stakes for making this work, they could not be higher, especially when you look at who relies on the canal the most. The U.S. is far and away the biggest user. Over 70% of the cargo that goes through there is either coming from or going to the United States. And right behind them, the world's number 2 economy, China, at over 21%. And this right here is what we mean by a geopolitical choke point. The stability of this one little stretch of water has a direct impact on the economies and the strategic interests of the world's biggest superpowers. Its smooth operation isn't just a business concern, it's a matter of serious international importance. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, it's pretty clear the Panama Canal has shown some incredible resilience. It stared down a worst-case climate scenario, and thanks to some clever management and the fact that the world just can't live without it, it actually came out financially stronger than ever before. It's quite a story.
But that leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? The canal has proven it can adapt for sure. But in a world where our climate is getting more and more unpredictable and where global trade just keeps growing, can this 100-year-old marvel of engineering truly be future-proof? I guess the next decade is really going to tell the tale.